Hi, my name is AJ Spieringshoek, and this is my story in my words.
Greetings, Sanbonani, Molweni, greetings to everybody. And thank you once again for joining us for another episode of the African Playbook Network within our series called My Story in My Words. Today we are very fortunate to be joined, actually we are joining you in camp, joining the it's the SPAR Proteas.
Well, SPAR South African Women's.
Yeah, SPAR South African Women's Indoor Team. And I've been pinching myself the whole week with the pronunciation of your surname because I'm normally the person that people butcher my pronunciation, but it's been a while since I've had to practice. Don't worry, I've practiced the whole week. It's AJ Spieringshoek.
Yeah, you perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Practice does make perfect. Thank you very much, AJ, for joining us and allowing us actually into your space with the team and into camp in the build-up to the tournament this afternoon. I'm going to get the name. It's the Kathia Energy Nkosi Cup.
Yeah. No, it's a pleasure. It's good for you to be here.
Yeah, thank you very much, AJ. I think let's take it back. You know, you were announced as the head coach in May this year, but I think what we do is we go all the way back to where AJ started sports. You know, what are some of your earliest memories when it comes to your sporting journey?
I think when I think back to it, I was always running. My parents used to tell me stories about just when I was a baby, I just used to run around. Never used to run really formally. I did do 100s and 200s of that at school. Won a few races here and there, but it was never really a big thing. Got into high school where obviously sport became a little bit more formal. Played cricket, was in the athletics team from a young age. Played hockey. Hockey wasn't, at that point, was probably not my main sport. Hockey wasn't. It was one of those sports where we played it as a family. We saw it on TV. I didn't want to play rugby. In grade 7, I just made the decision. I'll stay in hockey because I played hockey and rugby at primary school. Moved into high school and just thought, just with the game advancing quite a bit and the size of players, it wasn't the game for me. It just wasn't at that point. I was a very short and thin, but I still am. But I was one of the shorter kids at school, and I chose hockey. Like I said, hockey wasn't a big thing. Cricket was quite a focus for me. I was very fortunate to be captain of the cricket teams in all the age groups I played in. But the athletics was probably one of my stronger points. But it was also one of those sports where I didn't really put extra effort in. You know, when I had coaching sessions of probably 3 or 4 a week, that's the sessions I did. I wouldn't go to gym or do extra stuff because at that point I wasn't as disciplined or I didn't realize that I needed that. So that was sport really at school. And now I was very fortunate. I had lots of support from family. My mom and dad used to quietly, they do still now when I coach, quietly just sit on the side. My mom will get excited every now and then to watch, but I was always very fortunate that they were there. My sister got most of the arty genes in the family. My dad and my sister is more on the building trade and architecture side, so they got that. My mom and myself were that. So my mom was always the energetic one, but my sister used to come and watch quite a bit, and she played a bit of sport. So that's what always sport was, and it was always the biggest thing for me at school. Sport was, it's almost that's the reason I was at school. I never really worried about schoolwork. Schoolwork was just the byproduct that I had to be there. Parents, I just felt school was there because my parents would work. I had to be somewhere. I couldn't be left alone. I wasn't the naughtiest kid, but I'm sure there were days that I would catch on some nonsense. So I think school was keeping me in check at that point. So yeah, that's where sport was at school, and sport was always a very integral part of who I was and who I am today.
And I think, AJ, also just looking back, I do hear you mention quite a lot about your family and supporting your journey. But now, you know, almost 20 years involved in coaching alone. When you look back at your time involved in sports, what are some of the key moments in your childhood that you pick up that probably kept you within sport?
So one year I was quite interesting. I had a serious amount of disappointments. I had early on in primary school, and this leads more to my triathlon career. I had this massive fear of water. I never wanted to swim. They wanted me to take part in galas, and I just had this fear of water, and I hated the sensation of my head under the water. that was one thing, because later on in life, when I started seeing things differently, triathlon became a very important part of who I am. Still a triathlete, and overcoming the fear of swimming or the fear of water, and I actually really love swimming now. It's still not really good at it, because if I compare myself to people that maybe are my age, I'm coming out the water 5-6 minutes behind them. But it's a portion, it's a part of it that I've looked back and it's helped me so much, made me appreciate triathlon more. There were times where I was in primary school, had a little, not an injury, but it was a little nigger in my calf, was out for a bit, and I was in tears because I couldn't play. But at that point, obviously so young, couldn't understand that these things can happen. High school, the critical part in high school was I tore a ligament in my knee playing in a sevens rugby tournament. I just made the Western Province cricket squad. It was an extended squad. I think, given the players in the group at that time, Dominic Teller, Richard Levy, those type of players, I probably wouldn't have made the side, but I was still in the squad. I just ran a Western Province qualifying time to go to the, at that time, it was Athletics South Africa's USASA schools tournament, or schools competition. I'd run that in December, my grade 11 year, then played in a sevens rugby tournament and tore a ligament in my knee. And also, like, obviously I say it back then, I regretted that decision, but that formed the basis of who I am today as a coach. Because what happened was, what was going to be a really, really good sporting year for me in matric ended up being one of the best years from a completely different angle. I was one of the top sportsmen at school. And again, that focus on just focusing on school, on sport, is probably one of the reasons why that injury played such a big part in matric. I didn't play any sport in matric. I was the athletics captain, the cricket captain, vice captain of the hockey side. And I was fortunate to keep the cricket captaincy and attended every match. I went to go watch all the matches. Athletics, I was the captain. I couldn't take part. The school still allowed me to go fetch the trophy and that. I still saw, so from that side, I couldn't be there as a player or an athlete, but I had to take a different role. And I think that brought out a strength in mine of a support role. I always like to be playing the sport. I still do. Don't really play hockey that much now because of the coaching, but it's brought out a part of me that I didn't know I had at that point. And it's all built to this point. And I look back at that now. That was end of 2003 when that happened. 20 years to the day when, well, a couple of days from now, it'll be 20 years to the day that I had that operation. And I'm sitting here on the verge of my first national coaching job or coaching tournament in my own country. Obviously, I had Malaysia. So it's a pretty special journey from that point until now. And those moments have really built me into the person that I am. And I can look back at that now. Quite interesting that I use my age. I mean, I'm 37 now, so not very old. But if I look at the squad that I've got, I mean, the oldest player we have is 26 years old. And I can now start giving some of that input back to those players. I mean, we've just gone through a difficult period as a team the last 24 hours. 2 players, unfortunately, won't be playing this week. We've had to deal with that. And it's really hard as a coach to send that message across, because you've had 14 players put in so much effort over the last 3-4 days, and now you've got to give that message across to them to tell them, listen, but unfortunately we've, as a staff, decided that 2 of them will not be playing. Unfortunately, 12 can only be part of it. So those type of moments has grown to this, and obviously I'm learning as we go. As a head coach, I'm only a couple of months in, and there's been lots has happened that time. So yeah, a lot of those moments, especially that, like I said, that torn ligament in my knee, was the catalyst for a lot of what I'm doing now.
And I like the fact that you mentioned that you're literally on the verge. It's a matter of hours till the team takes to the field. Ironically, within the same month as the operation that you then had on the ACL, but in your home country as the head coach. But I want to go back. Let's actually talk about that injury when it occurred. I mean, as a 17-year-old getting such an injury, what were the people around you saying at the time?
So I think something that shielded me a bit from the emotion was that it was the last week of school. I'd been to school. I then subsequently with the operation took off the last week of school. I was very fortunate that some of the school teachers, besides my parents that were there, I had a lot of school teachers and friends that came and visited me at the hospital. I was in Panorama Mediclinic. And I think had I gone to school with crutches, with a knee problem, I think I would have broken down even more. I don't think emotionally back then I could have handled it, but I do think the timing, the way it's happened, just shielded me a little bit, because then I could go straight into holidays. And then what happened with holidays is we spent a lot of time with family. most of our friends in that would have scattered to various parts of the country for holiday. So that support structure was really good. I think I was very fortunate. I still remember it this day. One of my big mentors at school and one of the coaches, Mr. Koo Jonker, he's subsequently retired. He still walks his dogs around the school when I drive out, and I normally drive past his house. And we go back as a family because my dad helped with renovations at his house back in apartheid days, and he was always very respectful of my dad and that. And we as a family go way back, and he was very much of a mentor, and he was the first person that came to visit me in the hospital, and he was my hockey coach. He subsequently asked me to coach in my matric year the under 14A hockey team that he was looking after. So I helped coach that team. I helped umpire with that team. So that period was tough for me. Obviously, as a 17-year-old, I had no clue why this was happening. I felt the world was against me at that point. So I think it was just one of those things where my support structure really helped me with the emotions that I had around me.
What a turn of events, because such a moment then leads into something that has spanned over 20 years now. And, I want to ask you now, do you ever think if it wasn't for that particular moment, you would have stepped into coaching?
I don't think so. If I'm honest, I don't think I would have, because at that point, all I could focus on was my sport, what I was planning to do. I mean, at that point in grade 11, I was considering multiple options. I wanted to play. I wanted to look to go into athletics full time, because obviously 400 hurdles was really good at that point, and my times were decent. Wasn't the best times. I mean, I think I was probably ranked 4 or 5 at that point in the country. I mean, the kids nowadays are running way faster, but at that time it was. So I was looking at that. At that point, it was a little bit of a shock, because at that point I wasn't even worried about studying. So that's the type of thing. So I don't think I would have been in it. It just, the injury forced me to look at things differently. It says, you got an injury, what now? And I think that then subsequently helped me to be a better hockey player, because I wasn't a hockey player I was a good player, but I was not the one that stood out. I did what I needed to do. I was a good team player, and I then what happened, that had helped me then started thinking on a different way. So when I started playing again, which was only the end of matric, when I was slowly coming towards my recovery period, I couldn't play cricket, and there was a couple of indoor events. I then looked at the game really differently, and I started thinking like a coach on the field. And so I don't think I would have been in the coaching space or even the umpiring space had that injury not happened.
Yeah. And I like the fact that you do also mention umpiring, because that's also been another journey of its own that's taken you all the way to Egypt as one of the technical officials. But we'll get into that. But just bringing it back more towards that high school and your high school journey coming to an end. What were some of the highest levels that you had participated in all the sports that you were taking part in?
So provincially, I'd never made a provincial hockey side at school. Cricket was I was always in a squad. I was in a Western Province squad. So my achievements at school were nothing special compared to, well, good enough for me, but nothing special for an every sport person. So I mean, my best achievement obviously would have been that under 17 gold medal I won at Western Province from the 400 meter hurdles. That was the year we had stepped up into 400 from 300 meter hurdles, and it was just one of the things I started having my growth spurt, and my legs got longer, and I just was able. That and triple jump was an event that I could do really well in, and that's probably the biggest achievement. I mean, other than that, there was occasions where on the cricket field I was captain of the side, and I used to think about the game quite a bit. And there was 100 I scored against Bergfleet, and Bergfleet had a very good side that year, and it was one of the more special ones we were at school. And quite interesting, Les Ryan, who was the umpire, and he coached at Bergfleet. We've known each other for years. He's been involved in cricket and hockey for many years. I still remember he's at Redham Constantia as the head of hockey. He was the umpire on the side, and I hit a 6 over his head, and my mom was standing on the balcony at the school, and she was celebrating. And then afterwards, and my mom only told me this like a couple of years later, that he went up to her and he said, "Ma'am, I'd just like to congratulate you on your son." But he didn't know it was my mom. But because she was jumping up, he just assumed it was. So that was quite a cool thing. So that was quite a special achievement. There were a couple of big cricket achievements that, from personal achievements that were really good. Like there were some batting knocks where I would make like a 50, not a very big score, but I would have to grind it out. I took balls in the chest or whatever. So those were really cool. And there was one sporting result in, I think it was under 16. We had beaten Wynberg in a match 2-1 at Wynberg Astro, and Wynberg were this golden team at that year. That ended up being one of their golden years in 2003 or 2004. But in 2001, we played them. We beat them 2-1, and it was one of the best achievements I think we've ever had. I think subsequently after that, we lost like 9 or 10-0 to them because they were just that good. That was also a really, really special achievement. But I mean, I think for me, from an individual point of view, I don't think I had many. But what I really enjoyed was being in the team environment. That was a really, really cool space. I just like to be around people and being in an environment where there's different people, especially in South Africa. We've got different cultures, different races, different religious beliefs, and all that coming together is truly special.
Yeah. And I think, you touch on the diversity of the country and that being so special. And one of the things that do really pull you into sport and one of the things that you do enjoy. But, now moving more along, you then coach the under 14A team at Settlers High School during your matric year. And within that coaching year, your first year of coaching, are there any moments in that particular year that then stand out for you?
Not many, but there was one result that we had where I was helping coaching and where a player was struggling to do this one little skill. And we had struggled not struggled, but we had trained so hard to get the skill right. In one of the last games of the year, he got the skill right and he scored a goal. It wasn't, I think the team was leading about 3-1 or 4-1 at that point anyway. He scored the goal, but he was in such tears afterwards because he had worked so hard to that point. But he was also had this massive smile on his face because it was like a kid with a new toy. He just had this smile on his face. So that was really special because that was also one of those moments where you're struggling to get this child to get the skill right, and yet he got it when it mattered, and he had this massive smile, and that gave me some joy because as a coach to see how long it took us to get to that point, but the reward that he got out of it.
And also, like, we do a lot of retrospection on this show because we literally go all the way back. And I think my next question for you would be, if you're then to look at your journey throughout school, primary and high school, and in particular, the incident in 2003, and, the coaching that then, what it triggered with the coaching in 2004, what are some of the key lessons that you picked up as a person throughout that whole journey?
I think the first thing was that nothing comes easy. I think I had this belief that you could, I wanted to give up. When something didn't work the first time, I gave up and like, okay, it doesn't work, I'm not going to do it. Where, you need to try a couple of times before you decide, okay, because there are certain things you can and certain things you can't do. One of the mantras that we use in our team at the moment is, I'm okay with the girls failing, because failing is a part of our learning process. We've played practice matches now and we experimented with many different things. And one of the things I learned there was that you've got to just keep working towards something, especially if you truly believe in it. And I think that's something I think I was very hard-headed. I still am, that I know I can fix something and I know I can get something right. So that's something that I think has just brought out a little bit of a strength. And the other thing is accountability. I think there's a lot of times when you really need to look back and say, is this my fault? Should I have done that? Should I have done that? And reflection was a big part of it. Reflecting and then taking account for whether it's good or bad. And I think that's some of the big lessons I learned then. And obviously the key is being able to focus on something and not necessarily seeing it through, but trying hard, stick to what you're believing in. And not letting people influence it. Because I think I was quite influenced by people saying, oh, you can't do that. And then I got to a point where I was so stubborn, I said, well, I'm going to show you. And it's never been a driving force of mine to try and prove somebody wrong. But if somebody brought something to me and said, AJ, I don't think you can do that, I almost wanted to not prove that person wrong. I wanted to prove to myself that you can say what you want, but I'm going to go and try and do it. So I've channeled my thing, not now that you said I'm going to go prove you wrong, I'm going to try and prove it to myself rather. So I reframe that thinking so that I don't want to be driven by the wrong goal. I don't want to be driven by the wrong reason for doing something. I don't want to go win a World Cup because I want to beat X, Y, and Z. I want to win a World Cup because the team has got the ability to, we've got the depth, we've got the belief that we could do it, and we've got serious amount of talent in this country. So I think those reasons why you do something is also one of the big lessons I learned, that you don't have ulterior motives, that you make sure that you're clear on your reasoning of why you're doing something.
And that journey after that 2004, it's been such a beautiful journey. As we said, it's been 20 years. And the reason why I say it's been such a beautiful journey is because if we look at that moment where you tore your ACL, that's a career-ending injury. And for a lot of people, it's very easy to sit back and say, sports, it's been fun, it's been good, and move into the corporate world. But for you, it triggered you into a different part of sports and looking at sport in a different way. And along the 20 years, you've gone from being a coach at school to coaching PSI team, the Ball Foxes. Yep. You've been a tournament director for a lot of interprovincial tournaments. You even went on in 2017 to Egypt, the African Cup, where you were technical official. You the commentating bit during the peak of COVID. And there's the journey of being a triathlete, which you mentioned. I'm going to dig into that because I love how that bug bit. But, looking at your involvement now in hockey, what are some of the moments, with the things that we've said, the different parts? What are some of the moments there that really stand out for you?
One that I not struggle with, but one that's very difficult is I'm a very passionate person about everything I do, whether it's hockey, triathlon, whatever. Sometimes trying to keep the emotion out of certain decisions. When you're a tournament director, it's fairly clear cut. There's a certain set of rules. Like I said, we've had to deal with something in the last 24 hours where, there's a clear set of rules. There was wiggle room, but, so as a tournament director, you've obviously got to uphold the values of the game, obviously the laws, but the values of the game and the integrity of the game. So trying to take, when I'm sitting across a room from a kid that I've maybe coached and telling him he's suspended for a game, it was clear cut in the way, but it's never easy to have that conversation. And to try and, one thing that I struggled with, and I have learned it, and it still doesn't get easier, is I've learned to try and block out certain things when having a certain conversation. So if I'm having a conversation as a tournament director to a coach that's been naughty on the side of the field because they've said something to an umpire or they've stepped out of line, it's very difficult to have that conversation, but those conversations need to happen. So I've learned how to segment those types of conversations. Like I said, it doesn't get easier. And, from that point of view, and it's pretty black and white. There's no gray areas. I think in the coaching space, it's also tricky. You want to bring passion and your energy and your enthusiasm to it. But then there are also days where you have to have hard conversations with players. You have a hard conversation maybe with your captain because the captain's not playing well. Then you've got to take emotion and passion out of it. Because you need, it's only fair that if there's something wrong that needs to be dealt with, it needs to be dealt with the correct way. And you want to be empathetic to the scenario, but you also just got to be clear-minded. Like telling two players that they can't play this week. That doesn't get more brutal than that. And it's still emotional when we say it, but in the end, you've also got to think big of, I'm looking after a national hockey side, I've got the country's interest at heart when I do this. So that's some of the things that I've learned as I was younger, that there are certain decisions that need to be made, that hard decisions that need to be made, that you somehow need to segment yourself from, or being able to just channel it. There were moments also when I was as a technical official, I was maybe at some points too scared to make the right decision just because you want to keep everyone happy. But the reality is that we know that somewhere along the line, if you make a decision, someone loses out, whether it's right or wrong, or whether it's if it's a right decision, someone loses out somewhere. It's like a hockey match. It's the right thing. Someone wins 2-1, somebody loses, So those are some of the things also that I've learned. And I think it's mainly because my personality dictates that I just want to be friends with everyone. I love being social. So it's been difficult to almost sometimes put that aside and try to be the policeman at some points. and also being empathetic towards a particular scenario when you need to be. So I think that is for me the biggest lesson in all of this, whether it's tournament directing, being officiating. I enjoyed the umpiring side of things because I didn't use it as a thing, but having the whistle in the hand, you're really powerful on the field. You get to dictate literally how that game goes. And I started learning later on, the less I blew my whistle, the better.
Sure.
Just let the players play. And I got to the point where I was listening to what people say about you, but they're not necessarily targeting you. They're targeting the situation. And I used to take that to heart. I used to be morbid after games. I make one mistake, and I was good at umpiring because I always used to pride myself in the fact that I could see things objectively. I could be very neutral when I needed to be, and I still am to this day. And what I learned in that side is not to get a thick skin, but listen to what somebody has to say if they're being negative or criticizing. And then nowadays, it's not I don't care, but I listen to it. I say I don't agree with it, right? Throw it away, and I carry on. I'm in a space now where I'm under huge pressure as a coach. I'm taking over a team that has been successful. Now you've got to take it to the next level. Being fourth at the last World Cup, obviously the country is expecting us to win a medal at the next one. But it's not just going to happen. And I know I'm going to be under pressure to do that. And you get criticism here and there. We haven't been under lots of criticism lately because the team's been doing well. Yeah. When we're doing well, everything's hunky-dory. Yeah. We will be under pressure and have criticism this week because there will be things that we're going to try and do. And it's not that we don't care, that I don't care. It's just that there are certain things that you listen to and you take in and you're like, yeah, but I don't agree with that. And you just carry on. So I don't let it affect me as much. There are some times when it does, but I just get to that point now where I realize, take it for where it's coming from and just move on. In the past, I'd be angry for like 5-6 days afterwards.
Mm. And before we get into you as the national coach, I want to dive into the triathlete side of things because there's the story of Unokwacha challenge. Yeah. And I believe that's how the triathlete bug bit. What is the Unokwacha challenge and how did you get involved with it?
So I'm going to take it a little bit further back. So this was end of 2012. I was teaching at Fairmont High School and I was also their first team hockey coach. One of the teachers came to me and she said, listen, we've got a sports awards, we need a guest speaker. So I said, listen, I've got a buddy of mine. He's actually emceeing at the Nkosi Cup. Buddy of mine, we played hockey together. He started Red Sox Friday and there's this thing called Unagwaja Challenge. At that point, I didn't know what it was. So this was around about September. And he then said, AJ, gladly. So he was a former SA hockey player, coached in Ireland and played for South Africa for Men's Africa Cup, Commonwealth Games, various things. Said, let's get him to talk at our sports awards. I phoned him and said, fine. Then I was responsible to do his little intro. And then he sent me an intro and he said, listen, Unagwaja is what I'm going to focus on. So I said, perfectly fine, I'll do it. Then I started watching these Unagwaja videos. I'm like, jeepers, this is interesting. So basically it's back in the 1910s, a guy named Phil Masterton Smith, who used to be part of Natal Carbineers Army Wing battalion. He didn't have any money to get to the Comrades Marathon. So he literally jumped on a bicycle, cycled to the Comrades, and then ran the Comrades the next day.
Sure.
He came in the top 10 that year. And I think a few years before that, he had won the Comrades as the youngest, he was the youngest ever finisher. To this day, I think he'll be the youngest because the youngest age, now the minimum age is 20 and he was 19. He just jumped on a bicycle. It took him 10 days to get up there. And I mean, in the 1910s, I can only imagine what the roads and the bicycles looked like. Jumped in, ran the Comrades. So John saw this and he says, jeepers, well, let's recreate this. So Unagwaja was Paul Moss's nickname. Called Hare or Rabbit was his nickname because of the way he ran. So what happened was John then created the Unagwaja Challenge. I was watching these videos. So that started, I think, 2011. I was watching the 2012 videos. At that point, just take it back maybe a couple of days, my sister had asked me, are we going to run the Two Oceans Half Marathon? I'm like, no, we haven't run that. No, I'm not going to do it. But yet, a couple of days later, I'd watched this video, and straight away, I'm like, I'm going to do this. I've never cycled in my life before. Sure. I've never done any long distance running. I ran a little bit with club, at club hockey, we ran a little bit, but it wasn't a Comrades Marathon type of thing. And I was literally sitting there, and I was like, I want to do this thing. So then I did the intro to him. We then showed the video that I was fully attracted to. 1,700 kilometers from here through Western Cape, through the Eastern Cape, and then obviously through into the Midlands, into Maritzburg. And then you ran the comrades. And at that point, I'd not run. The next morning, I'd entered the Unagwaja. I'd signed up to enter it, and I'd entered the comrades marathon with nothing. There was nothing. I did not know what heart rates were. I did not know what running paces were. I didn't know running. All I knew about comrades was my birthday was on the 16th of June, and comrades was on the 16th of June for a period. So I used to wake up in the morning excited because it's my birthday. Switch on the TV. The only thing that's on 5:30 in the morning is comrades marathon. Yeah. So I grew up with comrades, knowing that it was I just knew it was there. Yeah. No clue what it was about. All I knew is that running from Durban to Maritzburg and vice versa. Sure. But at that point, when I was younger, obviously I hadn't traveled out the province, so I didn't know the distance what 89 k's was. So then I entered it, and it was one of those things where there wasn't even thought. Now if I enter a race, I need to think, how am I going to train for it? There was no thought. There was like, comrades, entries have opened. I'd entered Unagwaja, then made the Unagwaja team. There was major challenges along the way. My first run was a 7K run. We ran around, I plotted a route. And one thing I like to do when I do something, I like to plan it and put it in detail. And I think that's why coaching comes so naturally. Plan it, put it in detail. I knew exactly where the board markers were, where the board markers were, where the robots. I mean, I run it whenever I'm home. I go and run that route every now and then. And it brings back such memories because the smell of the morning, I was running past trees that early in the morning, it smells nice. Just that morning freshness. Running past Belleville Central train station and taxi rank. Sure. You run up there, back around Kastelsvlei Road, and just running around and taking in what people are doing. People are rushing to get to the train station, to get to work. So that brings back special memories. And so that was that. And then I ran my first race, which happens here in Waterfront. It's called the Growth Point Sundown at 10K. That was my first ever race. Ran at 10K, I think it's like 60 minutes or something, an hour. And did that. My first half marathon was the Kloofneck half marathon. So I was duped into it completely by my new running club, which I joined. I then joined Natal Carbineers just because it was so special to me. The guy said, no, do Kloofneck half marathon. So Kloofneck half marathon, basically you start at Camps High School, you run all the way up past the cable car, you turn, you come all the way around, go to the Signal Hill, and then back down to the school. So it's probably one of the hardest half marathons. And I had no clue. I didn't know. And then the following month, I ran Peninsula Marathon. That was going to be my qualifier. So from Cape Town all the way to Simonstown. And I think it was end of March was Two Oceans that year, Easter. Two Oceans was my first ultra. Massive issues. My legs were sore. I was just not used to it. And then Unagwaja. And Unagwaja was hard because, one, I had lent somebody's bike, which was too big for me. I didn't know. Again, I didn't know about it. Yeah. I then got given a bike. I got sponsored. KTM were very kind enough, sponsored a bike, fitted me and everything. Didn't really do well during Unagwaja. I struggled because I didn't know eating was a thing. I didn't know that, because my thinking was running. And running, it's very difficult to take in solid foods while you're running. So when you're cycling, you need to, you need to take those solid foods in. Yeah, so Unagwaja challenge was tricky. I mean, I didn't know what to eat. I didn't know how to eat. I didn't know what type of things. So I was taking in liquids, but I wasn't taking it in regularly. And I wasn't eating. I wasn't eating bananas or sandwiches or bars and stuff. So I had a major energy crash later on, which I subsequently learned from. Got through Unagwaja, and then it started getting easier. And the reason I say easier was almost like you got a little bit fitter. So you take this little nosedive, and then slowly your body's like, oh, okay, fatigue's there. Okay, we can push it a little bit more. So you almost trick the body into saying, no, I'm not fatigued. We can keep going on. So you almost want to carry on. And then I got stronger, and I started learning a lot about bike skills, learning about how to ride. I couldn't ride without my hands, and I learned one day, we're out there for 8-9 hours, so we're talking nonsense. We start teaching everything. Obviously stay focused because obviously we're in the countryside and the roads. We obviously want to stay safe. But it was really cool because we got to spend time together. And then obviously Comrades Day was still to my experience. I mean, I challenged it with Ironman, but Comrades for me is still one of the greatest sporting days in our country. There's nothing more special about Comrades. And the reason why I say that is because on the start line, you have professional athletes, doctors, accountants, street sweepers, miners, every single race, every single cultural group, every single social status is on the start line. And it's the greatest leveler of them all. Comrades levels can sort anybody out. I finished my first Comrades with a guy who was an ABAT runner. I finished, I think, 11:47, my first Comrades. Obviously, I was completely shattered. So that was just one of those things. I mean, I needed to finish from Camperdown to the finish. I needed to get there in 3.5 hours. on a normal day, if you ask me to run from Camperdown to Maritzburg, being fresh 3.5 hours of walk in the park. But at Comrades, it's really hard. And it was touch and go. At that point, people were all the Unagwaja supporters. They didn't tell me, they told me afterwards. But they were like, cheapers, AJ might not make it. So I was the last Unagwaja to finish. Very special. I had my parents there as well. I had my sister there. So it was really cool to be there. And it's still one of the greatest achievements from where I started to where I am now. And that for me was maybe the ACL tear was one big moment. Unagwaja challenge was probably another second moment, because after that I had this belief that I could do anything. I really had this, like, I can run through walls if I have to type of thing. That's just how I felt.
Yeah. And I think on a lighter side of things, I think now when you put the team out for a proper fitness session, everybody knows coach can do this. So you're not one of the coaches that will shout from the sidelines, run, but you've been there through on your own. But before we dive now further into your coaching and particularly the national side, how do you balance, being a triathlete and still partaking in a lot of activities and races, and the coaching and the preparation that you have to put in?
It's been super hard. I had to, when I initially took over the job, I say job, it's voluntary. I had to take some time off from triathlon. After my last Ironman that I did, it was the COVID Ironman. So it was the Ironman that was postponed from March 2020, and we only ended up doing it at the end of 2021. So it was delayed twice. Well, 3 times actually, because they delayed it to November 2020, then they delayed it to March 2021, and then again delayed it to. So it took me. I was training for 3 years for one race, and mentally I was absolutely drained. I just couldn't deal with all of that. So I took some time off then. Started training again. Then I got the job, and I'm like, I'm going to dedicate a little bit of time. So I do train still. It's just been very difficult to manage that, because I want to make sure that the team is fully prepared. And the only way the team is fully prepared is if I'm prepared, and if I have the correct vision. I think we have set the standard in our team now with where we want to be. So of what we're trying to achieve from an attitude and behavior point of view, we'll talk about it later. But it was a struggle and a massive challenge that to try and wake up early, do the training that needs to be done. But I remind myself of people like moms and dads that got to wake up in the morning, train, come back, get the kids ready, take them to school, start your work day, fetch the kids. And as a triathlete, you've got to train twice a day. It's just that's just how it is. You've got to bike or swim in the morning, run in the evening type of thing. You have to, because you need it. That's the type of training that's needed. So it has been a challenge, and I have been able to manage it slightly, but I haven't got back into a full training schedule just yet. Obviously, we're doing a lot with the indoor team at the moment, but I do get to train when I'm away, and I still trying to keep fit. I'm looking forward to the next race. I'm hopingly after our last Africa Cup, whatever, there's going to be time before the Olympics that I can do a triathlon. I'm really keen to get back. I think also the break has helped me just look at things again. I'm getting serious FOMO watching my friends take part, going for long rides, 200K rides when I can't really join them, and racing. And so I'm getting excited again to be back into it. Yeah.
And I think that excitement probably gives you a lot more energy when you do get back on the bike or on the road. But now moving into the national side, and I think before we even ask about the appointment, I want us to look into your philosophy, coaching philosophy, because listening to a lot of other interviews that you've done, I love it. I'll give you that from the start. But I want to ask you the question, like, how do you approach the art of coaching? And I'd say art because there's a lot of other things that you have to balance as a coach.
So I think, first of all, for me, taking this role, having been assistant coach, I'd learned a lot from Lenny in the way that he managed it. Because coaching in the South African space means that you don't just coach. You've got to manage finances on the side with your managers. You've got to manage personalities. You've got to manage potential sponsorships that come in. You've got to manage media. So the coach role that we have in South Africa, South African coaches, is a completely holistic role. So that's the first thing. So when I took on the job, or before I took on the job, looking back I took information or learnings from what Lenny did and where I thought that I could bring my strength in. I think the first thing is a collaborative effort. I feel that we have got so much ability from a staff point of view to give the players the tools they need to perform. It's I need to hold myself accountable if my players aren't performing, because I need to make sure that they've got the tools. And when I say the tools, I don't just mean the skill and the technical ability to play the game. I need to make sure that the frame of mind is right as well. So when we've, let's say, for instance, lost the game with Western Province or any of the teams, I go back and I say, okay, what was our preparation? Because I always look at the preparation first. Did I say anything in the team talk that could have put the players off? Because people see things differently. You put a burning car on a screen and ask people to describe it. There's going to be very different explanations for fire. Somebody could say death or whatever. There's many. So I look back at that as well. So that's the first thing. The first thing I think about is the collaborative effort and putting people around. I don't want to put people around that agree with me. I want to put people around me we can all hold ourselves accountable, but that have the expertise needed to perform, to do the job for the girls. That's what we need. So that's the first thing that I like to do. And we've done that now. We've brought in coaches, strength and conditioning coach, physios, doctors, a media team, social media specialist, photographer. We've brought in the people that can perform at that level. I don't feel threatened by it. If I bring in another coach that's way more experienced with me, that's not the point. The point is I want the players to have the best tools to go perform. So that's the first thing. The second thing is everybody needs to be on the same page, at least from an ego point of view. I think we in South Africa have this habit of building up people in certain areas. And we do. It's natural. We've got very good, very talented sportsmen. But when I tell my players, I said, I'm happy when you play well for your province. I'm happy when you're playing well for your club. But you've got to deliver when you play for your country. And we've got that now. We've got players that are coming in that are leaving the ego at the door. And I'm not saying they don't, because ego is a part of who we are. That pride is a part of who we are. But when we put our national kit on, we're not playing for ourselves. We play for that little kid that's watching. All of the players we have in our team were sitting in the stands, the kids that are sitting in the stands tonight, all of our players were one of them 10, 15 years ago. And we're playing for those kids. We're playing for the ones, the rest of the squad that's not there. We've got a big 28-man squad. 15 of them, 16 of them are not here. We're playing for those players because those players push these players that they are today. So I think those are the key things then from a philosophy, is that the team comes first. Irrespective of when I make a decision, I've told the players, I said, and I've proven it to them as well. I don't make decisions. I make calculated decisions that is needed for the team. Whether we need to win a game, whether we need to draw a game, whether we need to defend, every decision is that. And so a challenge that we have is that when a player comes off and I've pulled a player off the field and they've only played a minute, the tendency is, why have I off the field? I'm like, because there's a reason behind it. Yeah. So every player, wants to be, and I always tell players, you don't deserve to be on the field. You've got to prove that you need to be on the field. Yeah. So for instance, this week now, again, very hard that we had to drop 2 players because we could have literally played with the 14. They have to work to be in that starting lineup. They've got to work to be part of that. When you make the national side, that's not it. The job's not done. That's only the start, because now you've got to prove that you belong there and you've got to show that you can be better. So we're on that right track. All 14 of the players that we have shown massive signs of improvement. So from a philosophy point of view, those are the things that I would like to get right first, because I can give you the players any tactical plan for a game. If we haven't set the boundaries of who we are, first of all, what we're trying to achieve, the attitude and the behavior that we are trying to portray as a national team, none of those tactics are going to work.
I like, you mentioned quite a couple of things. Number one, players being able to leave their ego aside. And that's something that you do yourself when you step into the role, especially with the team, because I hear you talking about not being threatened to bring in a much more experienced coach to ensure that the girls are well prepared. And I want to ask you, are there any experiences in your coaching journey that have helped you develop that or get to that point where you're able to say it's no longer about me, but more about the players?
I think there's a lot of, I've learned in the past that there were certain things I couldn't answer. There were certain things that players would ask you, like, cheapers, I actually don't have an answer to that, but maybe somebody else has. So I was, again, when I was younger, I liked to keep everything to myself. I wanted to create my own space. But then I realized, AJ, why are you doing that? That's because your ego's getting in the way. You're focusing on yourself now. Because the reality is that as coaches, we are wanting the team to perform. It's not about me. It's not about my physio or whatever. We're just there to make sure that if something goes wrong, or to make sure if our physio is there for an injury, and I'm there to make sure that I lead the program in the right direction. And I think there were just times where I couldn't answer players. I couldn't answer a parent when a parent asked me a question about a player, and I'm like, I can't actually answer that. So I had to look deep down and say, listen, this is something we need to do. But I also think from an organizational point of view, to make sure that you maximize the people that are doing the job, you make sure there are people that can do their jobs well. Mm-hmm. So we got a video analyst that he's got a certain job to do. My assistant coach has got a specific role that he does. And I brought him in because we do play the same way, but he's got a lot of different things that he can master at that I can't. And that's why I've brought him in. Now, I still take the responsibility and the accountability as the head coach for the team. So if there's any decision that's to be made, it comes onto me and I must just wear it. Mm-hmm. But I put the people in place that have the strengths. And I realized that if we do that and we segment the role and make sure people are doing their job, then we can actually do, instead of having a massive load, we can do a little bit, but do it really well. Mm-hmm. And that's what we've got. I had Wayne Hendricks, who's a video analyst, but he's also a very good goalkeeper coach. Got him in this week to come and train the goalkeepers. He looked after that role. I got another coach to come and look at a certain way that we played, and I got advice from him afterwards. Our old national coach, Pierre Leroux, we played against his under-16 boys team as a practice match. A really good match. Really, he's got an unbelievably good side. And he was coaching that side. And I told him, I said, listen, I know you're coaching a team, but just when you have a chance, have a look at this. Let me know what you think. And then he brought in something, and I'm like, okay, this is something that we can use. So I just think that if we can give people roles like that and make sure people are professional and do their job properly, I really think that's where you maximize, where you're giving the tools to the players to be the best that they can be.
And let's then go to the appointment in May 2023. And anyone who's been around you will definitely agree with me when I say it was only a matter of time, because looking at your involvement and the passion that you have for the sport, it was only literally a matter of time till you got the national head coach role. And I say that because, AJ, 20 years, throughout the 20 years, you have been willing to be the guy behind the curtain to ensure that everybody is well prepared to go forward. And I say this having the 2023 World Cup, which was in Pretoria. You were there, and literally you were always behind the advertising board on your knees with a computer. And there's the one photo that you actually even have your reels where you are up in arms. I'm not sure what literally happened in the moment, but that's such a picture. That's a picture that I really feel really depicts who you are as a person, that you're willing to just stay there behind the curtains, just to ensure that everybody's moving correctly and in the right direction. But when those celebratory moments come through, you will enjoy it. And May 2023, the announcement comes. It comes on the back of you being the assistant coach since 2018, if I'm not correct. Since 2018. Number one, it's a voluntary role. A lot of people will be amazed at this. It's a voluntary role, but it's not just a head coach role that you mentioned. You literally take on everything around the team. What led you to say, okay, listen, I might throw my name into the hat here?
So quite interesting. It starts at PSI, because I coached at PSI a year or two after PSI started. They used to have the SA ladies team at that point. They didn't have the men. The men weren't playing that much, but every now and then the SA ladies play. And it was never an ambition for me to be one of them. I just watched it I used to admire what they were doing. And slowly I started coaching more. And the one guy, somebody said, do you feel like being a national coach? It was not part of it. And then slowly but surely, I started getting into coaching a lot more. I started discussing things. So Shane Cormack is quite an interesting story and quite special, because we come through the same ranks. She's coaching the Namibian ladies side this week. She's also got appointed shortly after me. The two of us started our coaching career started coaching the under-18 team. She was the under-18 Hawks coach. I was the under-18 Foxes coach. And David Joshua, who was the SA men's coach. The three of us used to share ideas with each other. We used to challenge each other. I'll tell him, listen, I'm going to do this to you today. And this is what we're going to do. How are you going to fix it? And then we would challenge each other. And it wasn't like match fixing or anything, but we wanted to challenge each other to think differently about the game. So after the game, he came to me, AJ, did you see what I did there? He says, but I did this. And we would like talk. And then there were times when I couldn't answer the question. I'm like, oh, I've got to go learn more. Then I started coaching at Western Province a little bit. And then also at that point would be cool. But it was never like a thought. And then I started doing well with the team. I'm like, listen, I could do this nationally. And then slowly that dream started becoming more of a possibility. And I always looked at the PSI. When I was coaching PSI, I always looked at the team with admiration. I looked at the coach. I could be there one day, but it was never really like, my mind couldn't come to terms with what it was. And then obviously at the World Cup was truly special. That was a really, really special team. And I think that picture, Carl Siebach, who's the photographer, and he's here this week, he said that he was trying to take a picture of the players celebrating and his camera was out of focus because he just took it quickly. And that was, I think, our first goal against Belgium. And that was the game, probably the biggest win that we've had as a country. And the reason being is that took us to the semi-final and meant that we were going to be, no matter what, top 4 at the World Cup. And top 8 was our goal. And I think that just brought that out. And RJ and Kayla, I think, are in the photo. They also like bring that passion. So yeah, me with my left sitting there behind is always a big thing. I wasn't going to apply for the role just because we know that the next World Cup's February 2025. And after this 2023, we thought, keep the coaching structure the same just till the next one, and then we can look to change. So I wasn't going to. And then I had a chat with Lenny, and Lenny's like, listen, it might be time for me to go. And then at that point, I thought, but he said you will still be interested. So I thought, okay, let me just apply and throw my name in that. I'm happy if I still stay assistant coach. Let me throw my name in there. So it did come a little bit as a surprise when I got the phone call. I got a phone call from Lenny to say, listen, I'm going to step down. I'm going to resign. Just thought I'd let you know. And then I got a phone call from Reggie, who's our head of high performance, to say, listen, we would like to appoint you. Obviously, pretty emotional at that point. I phoned my parents straight away because they're my biggest supporters. And it really then started, as soon as that happened, before they phoned me and the public announcement was only made, I think, a week later, I started doing my work. I started like, okay, I've thought about this because I already in my mind was playing, AJ, if you're going to be the head coach, what are you going to try and do? I started plotting. And then I don't think I did anything else that whole week. I only focused on indoor. And then I also looked at it, okay, but we need funding for this. We need funding for that. How are we going to get kids here? How am I going to get... And I started plotting and planning all of that. And then when it happened, or the announcement made, I think there was a lot of people that sent me messages. And I was quite overwhelmed by the amount of messages I got to say, yeah, we know you deserve it. And I still didn't in my mind, like you say, it's not if, when. And I still in my mind didn't believe it. It's still one of those things. And then I just trusted my ability. I said, AJ, this is now the time. So own it, take the congratulations, say thank you, and do the job now. So it has been a pretty insane couple of months.
And, you literally just proved what I said. It's not a matter of if. It was literally a matter of when, because you get the call, within the announcement's only going to be made weeks later. You don't go out celebrating that. You literally get cracking and you start working on it. And I want to ask you, when you get that role, what were some of the objectives that you then had?
So initially, we needed to expand the squad. I felt that we needed to give some players that have performed well an opportunity. So the first thing I needed to do is get approval to extend the squad from 24 to 30. And the reason I wanted to do it was a couple of young players that I wanted to give exposure, not necessarily for 2025, but for 2028. But also because a lot of those youngsters had come through PSI and was playing at a high level at that point. So Emily McKay is one of them. She got a debut now in Malaysia. She's playing at PSI for the under-18 Panthers team this week. Elizabeth Porter is another youngster. She's finishing matric now. She'll play for the PE franchise now. She's going to make her debut hopefully in Switzerland. So that was the first objective, was to try and expand the squad. And then it was to lay the platform of where to next. So we know we've got the World Cup. The first priority was Africa Cup. We hadn't won the last two. So now the priority, as I'll say it clearly, we need to go and win it. We need to go and win the Africa Cup. So from the objective point of view, we obviously worked backwards from the World Cup. So we're very fortunate that Africa's now got 2 slots been allocated. So we still need to win Africa Cup, but 2 African nations will get a chance at the World Cup. So I looked back then and I looked at the amount of months. So at that point, I think it was 19 months from the time I was appointed to the World Cup. And I then looked at the possibility of how many games we could play. So if we're looking at the series, we've obviously got this series. We got recently Malaysia and Switzerland. And what I realized is that we need to give a wider range of players international exposure. They still need to be good enough to play in the team, but we need to take risks on some player and give them the chance. And I looked at that and I said, okay, we don't have much time. So this is quite an important period for us. A lot of our players, so we'll go till about May, we'll have Africa Cup. Plan is to obviously try and win Africa Cup. So what we're doing now is we're dividing the squad evenly by giving players an opportunity. Under 21s are coming back after the World Cup. We've given some new players a chance for Malaysia. We brought some players that had leave issues, brought them back for this series and for Switzerland. So there's various things there. And then I don't see the players till September again. So there's a long period for Olympics that some of our players will go to. So we actually, when I started, we had limited time. I then looked at it and said, okay, if that's the case, what is the best way possible for us to be successful in 2025 and win Africa Cup? And that's what we're doing now. So the next time we pick literally the best 12 that is available to play. All our 30 players are available for Africa Cup. They've made themselves available. We then pick the best 12 then. And then hopefully win Africa Cup. It's going to be hard. Namibia has always been a massive competitor for us. Their indoor hockey is really good. So that was the one thing. And then the other thing was to change the style of hockey so that we become way more attacking, scoring way more goals. I don't care how many goals we concede, as long as we score one more than the next team. That's it. Because the defensive structure, goal scoring is not easy, but there's a lot of things we can do to get them to score goals. And I think we've done that. We'll see this week. We scored a lot of goals in Malaysia, and I'm hoping that we'll quite a few goals this week. And the defensive structure takes a lot longer to get right. We are slowly on the right track. And there will be mistakes that we make in the defensive structure. We're going to look loose. We're going to look, this team's not defending well. But there's a plan. There will be times this week that it might not look like we have a defensive structure, but everybody understands what the role is and what needs to be done. So those are the two things: score more goals and tighten up defense a little bit. Because we were good defensively. We played Netherlands and we defended really well. Netherlands rarely had any opportunities. That game, I think we lost 3-2. We really defended well, so that's one of the good strengths of ours. So those were the main objectives, and then obviously if there were younger players, give those younger players a chance, because it's not a lot of time to build a new team. It's not a lot of time to put. We need to look at what we have, look at what we can come in. And we lost our captain. She decided. Well, I say lost. She decided to retire, and rightfully so. She's given a serious amount towards hockey. So that's something that we had to work around, but it was also okay because I brought a youngster in our place. So we're looking forward to 2020. So those were the main objectives that we had to look at when I started.
And I like the fact that you literally took that. I'm not going to call it a risk, because the way that you're doing it is really well, incorporating younger players into the team. And I want to, with the objective of growing that pool, but you then go out to Malaysia 6 months into the job. Since the announcement, you go out to Malaysia and then you win the Tauniki Zara Cup.
Tuanka Zara Cup. Yes, that's correct.
Zara Cup in Malaysia. And, when you look back at how the team prepared for that particular tournament, what are some of the things that do stick out for you in that preparation phase leading up to Malaysia?
A lot of the girls were doing a lot of work back home because, we met in July and we had our selection camp where all the girls came through. There were some girls that couldn't attend because of illness, and there were some girls that were in the outdoor team that couldn't attend. So that was the only real time that we could lay some sort of platform. I then contacted some of the coaches that were doing high performance back in their towns, and I said, listen, this is what we need to achieve. A lot of girls were training really hard up to that point. A lot of good gym work. Like Punolo, who made a debut in Malaysia, who's playing this week. We spent a lot of time in the gym because she realized that was a part of her that she needed to strengthen, and she's been really good. And that's something that impressed me. And then just how quickly the girls responded. I think by bringing 7 new players into the side, there were 2 things that happened. One, the 7 players that were there almost said to themselves, listen, I'm in the side now. I'm new. I might not be back in the side. So I need to fight for my place. So all 7 of them, I can say, as a fact, proved that they belong in the national team. The problem is we make a space for 12, but they've proved that they're good enough to be there. Which meant that the 7 that were left at home, so we left Danny de Oliveira, Tatum Kraut subsequently was not playing here, but she's playing in Switzerland. She stayed at home. Jess Larden, Cherie Gravenstein. They're now saying, whoa, listen, they've just won a tournament with 7 new players, and these players have performed. I've now got to perform. So I'm expecting a performance from those players. I mean, and it's not harsh for me to say that it's something that they expect from themselves. So I think that was how that played out. And then also the atmosphere in the team was really good. And I think Kelsey Swanepoel said it on the plane home. She said, it's not like there was one debutant. There were 7 of them. So it was like they were all in the same boat, sink or swim type of vibe, with our captain and a few, Edith Madikwe, Kayla Taylor Duval, all were at the World Cup. So they were in there. And then obviously it was a late change with Charlize Swanepoel coming in. But that mix was unbelievable, really good. And also Edith and Kayla had just come back from winning the AFCON outdoor tournament to qualify for the Olympics. So there was this interesting dynamic in the side that really just everything mixed. So how we got that right is still a mystery to me. We watch those videos all the time, and myself and Calvin, as my assistant coach, we just like look at it. We're like, how did we get this right? Because the focus was never to try and go win it. You always play to win. I say that we always play to win. But we were looking for a performance and a learning. We just wanted to make sure our graph went up. And we've had a nervous first game against Malaysia, played against the home team. They're looking forward to this. We were the highest ranked team there. We didn't even know they were doing the fixtures according to the rankings. And we were the highest ranked team there. They were looking forward to playing against us in front of a big crowd. We were nervous. We were lucky. We weren't lucky, but we held on really well to them to win 3-2. And then we just excelled from there. So yeah, that was a pretty special week away.
And I'm going to put you on the spot because you literally just answered my question without answering it. My next question, which was, how did you get it right? Like when you look at it, what would you say you got right at the tournament 6 months in?
I think player understanding. Players knew exactly what their roles were. And we wanted them to experiment on the field. We still want them to do that because the players ultimately need to play what they see in front of them. We can give them all the tactics in the world, but if the team arrives on a different tactic, they need to make that. So one of the other, if I take a step back from an objective point of view, is we want to have more adaptable players on the field. Players that can look at a scenario that is completely new to them and make good decisions from it. So I think players understood exactly what they needed, and the players that didn't just asked. They just simply, and we have this thing where we're scared of asking questions. We've got a very open policy in our team about addressing issues that need to be done and asking the questions that needed to be asked. Because even the very simple things sometimes are difficult for people to understand. So I think the players definitely knew what was going on. We as a management staff were clear on what our values and our culture wanted to be in the team. We were clear on that. So we weren't like Calvin would whisper to Shiloh, listen, does AJ want us to do this? We were all clear. We knew exactly what we wanted to achieve. And secondly, I think tactically we were very good. The players understood the objective for each game, but they understood that each game was a learning process from the next. And what was nice is that was 5. I mean, we played 5 group games. I'd say 4 of them were completely different. All 4 different. The 5th game against Switzerland, we experimented because we knew I'd qualified for the final. Switzerland had to win the game. We experimented a lot, and with 1 or 2 decisions that didn't go away. I mean, I think we lost 6-3. I think it would have close to been a 4-3 game maybe, but we played around with combinations that we don't normally play with. We tried a few new things, and we just and for us it was to see what they were going to do because they needed to play their hand because they needed to win where we didn't. So it gave us that game was more of a bit of a sightseeing game to see what Switzerland doing because they needed to go all out, whereas we then took that we got more information from that game than necessarily what they got. So that's why the game was a lot closer in the final. But yeah, I think that's the players take big credit there for the way they stepped up and they performed in that game, in that series.
And there's 2 things in what you've literally just said that I want to pick on. And the first one is understanding. And it's a key thing whenever you talk about the team. I've listened to other interviews as well that you've done, is that your stakeholders being the players, your assistant coaches, your management team, and your sponsors all seem to have an understanding of what's happening and what the objectives are. And I want to ask you, how do you then communicate those objectives to everyone?
So we try and communicate. We've got a WhatsApp group with the players, and we try and update that WhatsApp group often with with things that we're trying to achieve with the team, I stay in contact with sponsors and various people just to keep them in the loop of what we're doing. But the players are constantly aware. Like now, there's only a few players. I think there's about 4 or 5 players that haven't been part of my squad yet, or to my team. They'll be in Switzerland. So Switzerland is the last part of this first half of the journey, and they've started to get an understanding. They're watching games. They get to see what it is. I'll have conversations with those new players in the new year before we play, so that they get an understanding of what the way we're trying to play that. And then also the coaches that I've got around. So Calvin, who looks after the Durban franchise, he will help with the way we play in Durban. We've got somebody in Joburg. So there's people around that will deliver those messages across so that they understand what they're getting themselves into.
And with that, you did mention it, like you've got people in the different provinces communicating the way that you want to play, number one, and some of the objectives that you have for players on a personal level in terms of them just keeping fit and moving forward. And how big of a difference do you think, is it something that's been done before within the SA indoor hockey women's team setup?
So Lenny did before he got high performance law hubs wherever. So I look after Western Province players. He coached the Durban players. What's nice now, what's different now, is that a lot more provinces are playing indoor. A lot more provinces are focusing on it. So we've got 3 players based in Potch at the moment, and they play a little bit indoor. And Sean Hulley and Nelson Kumani now, they're the 2. They run hockey at Northwest University. They now on board now. They're starting to do some things there. So there's just a lot more people now getting on board than in the past, and more people that are interested. I think the World Cup really helped. Us coming fourth was huge. I think it's the best result any South African hockey team has ever achieved at a World Cup event. So that was really big, and I think there's a lot more interest in it. So a lot more people are taking time to want to do this. Also, the reason why that high performance works so nicely is that the next national tournament we have, which is in February next year, that's a selection for the World Cup. So we pick out however many players. That will be the World Cup squad. So a lot of people are focused on trying to play well there. So yeah, that's something that has just improved, or we just increased the numbers over the last little bit.
And the second part that I then want to pick on is you touched on what we call scenario-based training, and that's how you've been preparing the team. And why that particular teaching method? That's what I'm going to call it here.
So when we come to a camp or a series like this, it's clear cut. We've got Ireland, we've got Namibia. You have to prepare by what you think the team's going to do based on video from previous competitions or teams that you play against. Now, Namibia is we're quite fortunate because we played them recently. Ireland, the last time we played them was at the end of last year. So the scenario-based system that I use is because we want to play. A camp like this is more focused on tactical. We want to make sure the players understand where the spaces are, what we can and cannot do. And I feel in the preparation before a match, you try and focus on those type of things. If it was a camp, it would be more technically and fitness-based, where we try and make sure the players have the skills to go and roll out the tactical. And that's what we've done this week. It's a good camp because it was 3 days, but it was also a short camp. There wasn't much time that we had to prepare. But in the time that we had, we did a little bit of technical and a lot of tactical and penalty corner focus. So that's what happens. And then obviously once we play Ireland and Namibia, once we play those 2 games, we might have another training session in the morning before one of the other games to see now, okay, they've played that way. How are we going to change? Are we going to make changes? Are we going to change things along the way? So those are type of things. That's the reason why I've done it like this. When we get to Switzerland's going to be slightly different because it's a test series, but they're preparing for Euro indoor champs, which happens the week after we're done with Switzerland. We then preparing for that. So Switzerland might not necessarily be where we focus on necessarily playing in Switzerland. I want to look at the last little bit of things that we need to achieve to play at Africa Cup or at the World Cup. So Switzerland will be slightly different to that, but we'll still be on the same trend of the type of hockey that we want to play at the World Cup. That's the trend that we're on. So this is the same now. As we're looking to how do we win the World Cup? What do we need to do to win the World Cup? What tools do we need to give the girls? And that's why the scenario-based is better because we don't have a lot of time with the players. They're not full-time hockey players. And we need to give them enough scenarios that it covers the ways. We're never going to cover all scenarios, but we give them enough scenarios so that when they're on the field, it's like, oh, that's what we do here. So, yeah.
Yeah. So someone listening, before we even get to the listener, the trajectory of South African hockey at the moment has been exciting, because I'll take it all the way back to the Tokyo Olympics. That's where I kind of saw it on the rise with the national men's outdoor team. And then now with the Junior Hockey World Cup, the team doing absolutely amazing there as well. You know, with the trend happening on social media of us just beating New Zealand through. But, you know, and then the team goes out and does absolutely well, because for me, what amazed me was people that I know love sport but never thought about hockey were literally posting about the team, posting every single game that you guys were playing. I was seeing it all over my feed from friends and family and people that I just follow on social media. And the trajectory is there. People are interested. And probably people listening now will probably have the question of, we hear that there's the Africa Cup next year in May, and then 2025, it's the Olympics. But what can people expect? What's the vision for you and this team going through towards those two tournaments?
So like we said, obviously trying to win AFCON is a very important part for us. I do agree that hockey is in an exciting space because we've just obviously had our two outdoor teams qualify for the Olympics. It's a nervous time for a lot of the European and anybody else who hasn't qualified, because they've got a qualifying tournament in Jan. So from an outdoor point of view, that's very exciting for us. We can now solely focus on the Olympics. From an indoor perspective, I think everybody's looking towards the World Cup. Obviously, we've still got the very, very important job of Africa Cup. I think what's important for us is that we are constantly showing the country what we are capable of and doing it for our country. I agree, there's a lot more people talking about hockey now than in the past, and people that are not hockey supporters. And for us is to put the game, for people to see how we play, first of all, but to see the excitement of what indoor hockey brings. Indoor hockey it's an unbelievable version of the game that really complements the outdoor game so much. You know, I deal with Charles Bonnet, who's the outdoor coach. And he loves, because he's got a lot of my indoor players in his team, and he loves the indoor game because of what it brings to the outdoor game. I think that's what people need to realize. And I'm hoping that the supporters that come to Nkosi Cup, there's a lot of supporters that I know of personally, friends of mine that are not hockey supporters but are coming to watch, that they can see that, you know, hockey is not just this minnow sport. It's really big overseas. It's indoors, massive in this country. And I think we literally sitting on a gold mine at the moment that we need to explore. Because if we can come fourth at a World Cup with very little preparation compared to the other nations we played against, what's possible if we have a couple of more million rand, that we can have more training camps, we have younger development programs, you know, start paying staff, start paying players, looking after that type of thing, then the opportunities are endless. So I think we're in a really, really good space for indoor at the moment.
And, you know, you do mention that start paying the players, start paying the coaches. There was minimal preparation, not minimal, but it's not the ideal that any coach would have wanted leading into the World Cup. But what do you think then needs to be done to start attracting more sponsors from a hockey perspective?
I think we need to market the game correctly. So if I look at my team and I just look at it, we always ask the question: is our team marketable? Are we a product? And I say that inverted commas because we're not tangible commodities. We're people. But are we a product as a whole that a sponsor wants to align with? And that's what we've tried to show people, that we are still just average, normal people that are just very good hockey players. And I think that's the age-old question. You know, obviously, financially, with a lot of people, it's very difficult for people to make those sort of sacrifice for a sponsor and for a parent or a kid that's got to pay money to go to another tour. We've been very lucky. SPAR has backed us financially for the last few years and continues to back us, and that's helped a lot. The girls haven't had to pay to be here, so we really are happy that we're in that space. But they do give us money, and we're still going to need more. Taylor's also one of our sponsors that sponsors our kit. So it's an age-old question that has many different answers. I think hockey is the exciting part of the game that can get backing. At one point, it was the third most watched sport at the Olympics. I'm not sure the stat now, which just shows that a lot of people have eyes on the game. So there's a lot of work that we need to do to package this product and show people what we're about. That's why we as a team are doing the things that we do, because we're not doing it for the exposure we get. We're doing it for the difference that we're trying to make, and that's what we're trying to achieve.
And I just want us to continue this conversation where we're talking more or less about the state of hockey in South Africa. And on the Anomaly podcast, you actually did mention that there are other countries spend close to 280 days in a year together. And for you probably have one of the least amount of times with your team. And there's a lot of reason behind that, where players have to have their own 9-to-5 jobs. Others are still students. And we've got 9 provinces where everyone's scattered out. And then there's also the issue of just players having to play indoor and outdoor hockey. But for you, firstly, how do you balance that challenge? How do you deal with that challenge of having limited time? And number 2, how do you see us improving that? Or how would you like things to be improved for you to have more time?
So teams like your Chinas, your Koreas, India, they spend 95% of the year they spend together. They're staying together, they're staying in the same hotel, the same train bases, train twice a day. And they just got so much contact time together. That's the key. Indoor and outdoor is quite interesting, obviously, because outdoors the bigger game that everybody spends more time on. Having a program like a long program obviously requires quite a bit of money, but it does help my program because I rely a lot on what the girls are doing back in their clubs, even in the outdoor space, at least from a fitness point of view. I rely a lot on that because I don't see them for long periods. And I don't think indoor will change into a full-time program. I mean, if it does, I'll be very happy, but I don't see it being there. But we might get to a stage where players decide only to do indoor, only to do outdoor. I'm working quite closely with Charles at the moment, the outdoor coach, and we communicate all the time. The priority at the moment for all of our players, indoor and outdoor, is the Olympics. So and it was an agreement because he did the same after Commonwealth Games. He let all those players that were in the indoor squad, they only focused on indoor. So that's how we're working at the moment, and it's only fair. In the same way that after the Olympics, my players will be focused solely on the Indoor World Cup. So then from that, I don't think we will ever get to that point. And what we do is we take the short time that we have together and we just manage. That's what we need to train. What can we do in that short space of time? And then we do try and find more funding to have extra training sessions or more contact time with them. I think going forward, to try and change that is we need people to come and watch these events and see what it's about. I think we're very lucky because Kathir Energy has come on board, and Greg Dark, who owns it, I think really likes the product of what indoor brings. And that's why he's backed an event like this. And we need to find, because there are people that want to back events like this. We probably want to back females teams. They back teams for various reasons. And we need to find that person and show them what the product is. We've been very fortunate. I've got a videographer that's spending time with us. He's giving his time for free to do a 3-part documentary just to show what it's like to be part of our team. And I'm very open. I allow people to come training sessions. If you want to sit in my team talk before, I'm very happy to. I mean, some team talks is not conducive to that, but training sessions, I'm happy for people to do that because I think sharing is very important in our space because we used to like to hold things close to our chest. So I think going forward, we need to just get as many people as possible on board to try and get eyes on it. So for instance, I think for Nkosi Cup or maybe another series, we need to get people to come and watch the game first. We need more spectators engaging with the game. How we advertise that. In Malaysia was really cool. They got school kids and they gave us each school team a team to support. So we had a South African set of supporters from Malaysia singing Waka Waka and various things, But they're growing the spectator base. And the players started engaging with those kids because they came to every one of our matches. So that I feel is really cool. So that's something that we need to do. We need more eyes than just the standard hockey supporter. Because if you let's just look at Cape Town Sevens, for example, a massive event. The people that are watching there are not your diehard rugby supporters. They maybe say that there's people there that have no clue about rugby.
What's happening,
But the spectacle and what Sevens brings is something really cool. So I'm not saying we need to get to that point, which I don't think we will, but we can grow indoor hockey to the masses and show it more. I'm quite interested in how many people know that the national indoor hockey team or the Nkosi Cup is actually happening this time of the year. You know, yes, the hockey community knows about it because that's what they do. But does the cricket community, the rugby community, the people that don't watch sport, do they know? So that's the type of thing we need to. I think the start is for us to grow it to more people, because when we start growing it to more people, you get the viewership on SABC, Supersport, and various channels, and then subsequently the sponsors say, "Oh, there's a lot of people watching. I want to associate my brand with that." So when we start getting the spectators in and the eyes on our TV and into the stadium, that's when I think we'll then have more leeway with a sponsor to be able to come on board and say, "But I want to associate with that."
And on the topic of sponsors, I love doing this, especially with our hockey players. Is if I'm going to put you on the spot, AJ, I do understand that you've said we do need to get people and the spectators watching and interacting with the hockey more, coming to the games, whether it's watching it on TV more. And then essentially that's when sponsors will also start taking an interest to say there's a lot more people now getting involved. But the eyeballs are there. People are watching the sport. And probably there's someone listening to this interview who's sitting there and saying, listen, I know a person, or the company that I'm with might be interested in actually sponsoring the team. What message would you have for those potential sponsors? And you can look into the camera and speak straight to them.
I would like a sponsor just to come and join us and come see what we're about first. Yeah. We don't want money for free. Yeah. That's the thing. I think what we need to understand, and what I like to get the message across, I'm going to ask you for X amount of money. But before I do that, I want that person to understand this is who we are. This is what we're trying to achieve. This is what we stand for. Yeah. So that's the start. The final commercial details, that will be easily ticked off afterwards. But I need to be able to speak to someone and say, let's have a conversation. I can show you what the team's about. Because that, I think, is the key. Yeah. I think we have this habit, and I speak from experience with people that have worked in the space, is that we have this, we're asking for handouts. But yet, I don't want a handout. I want to be able to work for the money that we're going to get. We understand that people, from a financial point of view, want to give money, and it's a massive. I mean, to give, let's say, 3 million rand towards a team. I mean, I don't know if I had that money and I knew I could give it. I couldn't press send in my bank account to say to do that. It's a big amount. So those people that are watching that have somebody that's interested, we would like to show you what our team is about. We'd like to show you what the sport is about. Then we can then talk about how a financial or sponsorship deal can work. But I want people to see who we are first. We in South Africa generally have to pay our way wherever we go. Like I say, this team is fortunate they don't have to. But there's still players in this team who had to pay money to go to the World Cup in Chile under 21. I think like 80,000 rand. We had guys in the men's team that's gone to 21 World Cup that's paid money. So it is sad that is the case. We've got players that have to take leave. I've got a girl that's working at Investec, had to take special leave to be here. Another girl that's our goalkeeper that also had to take leave. We had students that have to take time out of their studies that, so it's a really difficult scenario. I've got my assistant coach who's the director of sport at school. I've got to pull him out. So that's just the people that I could name. But everybody in our team's got a similar scenario. So if we can share that story with people just to see what these exceptional sportsmen are achieving, I think people will understand us a little bit more. And then the conversation about sponsorship becomes a little bit easier.
Yeah. And to then continue that whole conversation, I want to ask you, what do you envision for the future of South African hockey? And after that, we'll narrow it down to the South African women's indoor team.
I think we genuinely have the ability for both men and ladies to win a medal at the Olympics. I strongly believe that. We showed it just from the men. I think the women all agree. I think the girls that I've spoken to, I wasn't involved, but the girls that I've spoken to all agree that wasn't a good Olympics for the ladies. The men performed exceptionally well. And what I've seen now with both teams is that Giles is doing amazing work with the team. The plan was always to go to Africa Cup and dominate Africa Cup. Not just win 1 or 2 goals, but dominate it. And that they successfully did that. And which is also not great, because you want your African nations to obviously be stronger. The stronger they are, the stronger we'll be internationally. But there's an improvement already. So I genuinely see a medal. I will say this, 2028 LA Games, if we get the finances right and the program right, our men and our ladies can win a medal at the Olympics. And that gives us 4 years to build. We already got a team, especially from the men's side, that has showed that they've beaten Germany at the last World Cup. They came close to a Belgium win. They were 3-0 up against the Netherlands, which is unheard of for a South African team, to be in that stage. We have a ladies team who went toe-to-toe with Germany recently, who Germany haven't qualified for the Olympics yet. Yes, we are. Yet we have. So I genuinely see that. I think we need to then also from my side, from a vision point of view, focus a lot on our under 21 bracket. Ladies probably not the result that they wanted in Chile. The men playing for 9th and 10th now, which I think is not bad. I think they will be a little bit disappointed. I think they could have been top 8. I don't know. I haven't spoken to the coaches, but I mean, just by what I gauge, because the quality of players that we have is really good. So that's where I think, at least from a hockey point of view, we need to be there. We've got the school base of high performance school players that are really good. The school, I mean, we must give credit to our schools. The programs that they put in place, they really, I mean, kids are playing 50, 60 matches a year, which some people debate maybe too much, whatever. But the point is that they're playing hockey, they're playing together, they're getting good high performance structures, and we got good players coming through. We need to keep them. The problem is obviously financial again. They're leaving high school. Yes, they've had to pay for it, but you're off your back of your parents sometimes. And maybe some people don't have parents involved. They've got some sponsors. But then after that, you got your studies. You've got to drop 100K a year for studies. And then you've got to pay to go to a tournament. That becomes a problem. So that's a bracket that we need to look at, and the amount of players that we are losing naturally. And nothing against the players. It's just the product of nature of what's happened. And then from an indoor point of view, I also genuinely think, I believe we can win the World Cup. I think that we've got the player base and the technical ability in this country to be at least a medal winner in 2025. And now I'm putting my head on the block here, but I think if we work hard and we perform, at least from a mental point of view, we do have the ability to do it. Whether we do it, it's a completely different story, but we do have the ability to do it. But I genuinely feel that we can win a World Cup. We shouldn't go to a World Cup and I know people say you must be realistic with your goals, but if you go to World Cup saying we're hoping for top 8, you've set the ceiling at top 8. We're in a good space in Africa at the moment because both the African teams, Namibia and South Africa, came in the top 8. I think, if I understand correctly, Namibia and the ladies unfortunately finished a little bit lower, but they're still in the top 10 in the world. On the men's side, the Namibian men, I think, came 8th and the South African team came 6th. Massive achievement. Really is. We're competing against some of the best European and Africa, Asian, North American, South American teams in the world. We've got such a good ability at school level, at PSI level, where the players are playing at such a high level. If we maximize that, we genuinely can win a World Cup. We've got a serious amount of work to do to get to that point. But like I said, we don't play for we target the top 8. And I still believe we should have just said we play to win. You don't go to World Cup to make up numbers. That is a non-negotiable for me. Are we here because we're lucky? No, you've qualified for the World Cup. You go out and do your country proud by trying to win the World Cup. That's it. Like I said, if you don't win the World Cup and you've got and you come lower than what you've wanted to go, it's obviously going to be disappointing. But you've got to set your sights high. You've got to set your dreams high. I mean, our men's team is incredible. It's an incredible men's side. Our ladies team is incredible. We've got 24 odd players that can easily play in that side, fighting for 12 spots, which is also a strength of what we've trying to achieve. When we do it, I'm hoping that we can do it by 2028. That's a goal of ours. We've got a lot of boxes to tick between now and then, and it's not going to be easy. I mean, you've got a team like Germany who didn't play at the last World Cup, will be at the next one. Germany's not going to miss out on another one. So there's a lot that we've got to do, but I genuinely see as a vision that's where we need to be. We have shown by the last World Cup, by coming 4th in the ladies and 6th in the men, that we can compete with the best. We now need to say, okay, can compete with them, but now we need to be better than them. Will we ever be? We don't know, but we've got to at least put the plan in and have the vision so that we can work towards it. So.
And, listening to you speak about the vision, not only for your team, but the vision for South African hockey, it's really exciting to see the passion, number one, from you involved. And no doubt, our sport is in the right hands. We've got our faith in you as a coach and everybody around you. I mean, you mentioned Giles quite a lot. And the excitement that came with his announcement as well, it was also a matter of, we're getting the right people more and more involved within the sport, and it's really looking good where we're going. And I want us now to take another step back. I know we've gone through the high school journey, we've gone through your journey and the team, but I want us to bring it more personally to you again. And if I were to ask you to reflect on your journey, sitting a matter of hours from the first game at the Ngosi Cup, as you said, you used to coach a PSI team, the Boland Foxes at PSI, seeing the national team participate. And, you're now a matter of hours away from coaching the national women's team in your home country, in your home city. And, just reflecting on that journey, what do you then make of the journey that's been? I mean, you mentioned the ACL, we mentioned Unogwaja Challenge, but now just sitting here a few hours from that.
It's a pretty crazy journey if you think about it. I think I say this and I get goosebumps when I say I've been very blessed that I've achieved what I have. I mean, not many people have been in that many aspects and avenues of hockey in South Africa. And I think a lot of what I've done in the past has helped me to be where I am now. Tournament director, umpire, player, coach at a young age, an injury. I've had a goalkeeper recently that the day before we flew to Malaysia, we had to pull her from the tournament because doctor didn't clear her for an injury. That was one of the hardest things to see a girl that's about to make a debut not go. But all those things has, I think, helped me onto the path of being a head coach. And I don't underestimate the honor that it is for me to coach a national team. There's so many people that could have been in my position. There's so many people that would have liked to be and is not able to. And I do it for them as well. I do it for the players. I do it for to be able to say, well, listen, I've got a bit of a strength that I can help these players grow. So yeah, it's been a crazy journey up to this point. I'm blessed and grateful that I've been given the ability to be able to do the things that I can do. Reflecting on it is very difficult because there's so many things to take in it. But for me, I'm just truly grateful that I literally can look at it back now and say how all the puzzle pieces came together from an ACL injury to, like you say, Unogwaja, and how it all linked into this role of being the head coach. And I say it as if I'm writing my memoirs at the end, but it's only the start. And I hope, if I'm still good enough and relevant to be part of the team, that I take the team for a couple of years and take them forward, because I know it's going to be some seriously hard challenges. I mean, everybody's obviously been wishing us well, and still congratulating us from Malaysia. But I know that there's going to be one heck of a roller coaster ride ahead of us. Like we've hit a speed bump the last 24 hours, but the team will step up from it with true resilient South Africans, and we'll grow from it. And I know that's not the last one we're going to have. That's not the last issue that we're going to have. I hope that we won't have, but I know that in our environment and, reflecting on it, we're very open as a country within the team and on how we feel that the players have the platform to say what they need to say whenever, and they will be supported from it. And that's I think that sort of platforms help me, because in the past I would run away from conflict. If there's an issue, I'm out the door. Whereas I've learned now that as the leader and as the head coach, that a lot of what's happened in the past has helped me to be that person. Some of the decisions I'm going to make is not going to be popular. It's not going to be the happy decision. You have discussions when you tell players, but sorry, we're not picking you for a series, and there's tears, and that's just the part of the role. I'm empathetic to that situation, that player, but these things have helped me, and looking at all of that has helped me reflect on it, because I've been in a situation where I wasn't picked. You can never compare two scenarios, but I know what I went through. I can only imagine what another person has gone through, and what emotional and mental energy they've put into, besides the physical, emotional and mental energy they put in. So I get emotional when I talk about it, because I know that those are hard decisions, because I've been part of it, and I've also been part of it when I haven't been selected for maybe a job or whatever. So I think reflecting on it, I've been truly grateful and humbled that this journey has brought me to this point, and now it's a start of culminating, putting all of that together into directing the girls and leading the girls in the direction they need to go.
And you did mention that you're very close with your family, with mom, dad, and your sister. And if you were to look at them, look into the camera and speak to them on the verge of the Nkosi Cup, as you say, the journey brings goosebumps. I mean, myself doing my research, I was getting goosebumps at listening to some of the stories that you've had, but looking into the camera and speaking to the people that have been there since that moment in 2003, what message would you have for them?
I think it's just a big thank you. I think my mom and dad, you've been like a serious support, always there. I've been very blessed to have the parents. Other people don't have their parents there at games. They'll be there at the match. So thank you for what you've done over the years. You were the first people I told when I got appointed. My sister, who's always been, completely non-sporty person, but always been supportive. So thank you to all of you guys. It's been really special. And this means a lot to me that you guys are going to be there. And yeah, appreciate and love you dearly.
Thanks, man. And I think wrapping things up, what advice would you have for, number one, young athletes in school, people who are partaking in school sports and looking ahead into the future, see themselves as professional athletes?
I think the first thing is listen to the advice. I know that there's a lot of advice being thrown around. I mean, we know, but most of it, I truly believe that most people are giving advice for really, really good intentions. So listen to the advice. When a coach says, "Listen, you're not practicing today because you've done a lot," listen to it, because the sad reality is we don't want a young player to get into a scenario where they have an injury and then they can be out for a long while. I mean, my thing is pretty simple. When I got my ACL tear, I shouldn't have played in that rugby match, but I was one of the prefects at school. We had planned all of this and felt it necessary to play. I don't think at that point anybody said not to play, although there was times where they said, "Listen, we just need to manage things here." And I didn't, and I learned that lesson. And I've had players that I'm dealing with at the moment that we do. So I think that's the first thing from a player is to listen to that. But yeah, that being said, if you have a dream and you have a goal, don't let anybody get in the way, because people are going to say so many different things. And it sounds cliche, but people are going to say so many different things. Don't do this. You can't do that. It's not possible. But a lot of people have so many big dreams. Khalid Mbaka said to me, we just had a chat. She made a debut in Malaysia. She's playing in the series. And she said it was an absolute dream of hers to be part of this. She sat there as a young kid, 13 or 14 years old, watching us. And I think she said she told her mom and her dad, "I want to play there one day." She's about to. She's a couple of hours away from playing. Yeah. And so for those young players that don't let people tell you, but I will say this, that try and find somebody that can help you along that journey. There's always people willing to help. And even if it's your parents, just go to them and say, "Listen, this is what I want to do. Help me do it." And I know there aren't maybe parents around for some people, but find that one person that can be that mentor and that can give that advice, especially from a young player.
And we've got this book with us. It's slowly making its more and more appearances on the show. But, part of the show is we ask our guests to leave a question for the next guest. A lot of the time, it's very blindly. You don't know who the next guest is. But, the guest that we had before you was Ongeziwe Mali. The outdoor women's player. And her question was, what is your why in the sports industry?
For me, it's quite simple. I want to serve. I want to help people perform. I get a kick out of telling somebody or instructing and helping somebody to do something, and then they do it. I get an absolute kick out of it. That for me, I want to serve. I want to be the best servant to the game of hockey and to the players as I can be. I'm 37. I'm hoping I've still got a long life ahead of me, but I've achieved so much that I've got to a point now where I'm giving back. And my goal in life has always been to serve. But the second part of that question is, there's a quote that I love is, "Your life is a message to the world, make it inspiring." And for me, it's not about living a life that people see, look at me, but I want to live a life that people can look at me and say, that's the type of life we would like to live. Not my life, but the type of values that AJ portrays. So those are my two things that are big to me. Serve and be a servant to the game and to the people, and just helping other people. That's whether it be hockey or in life. And then be inspired, try and be an inspiration to the next person by just living a life that you are content with, that your values are clear, your morals and your ethics are at a high standard, and that's for me is the life that I live in, and the 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 person that I want to portray, that I feel my characteristic comes out.
AJ, thank you very much. We really do appreciate you giving us this honor, firstly, to allow us into the space with the team, into the team's environment, and giving us your time, on the verge of what we've been talking about, the Kathia energy in Corsica. Yeah. It's really special to come into the space and listen to you speak about this team, speak about your story, but in essence, the plans that you have for this team. And there's no doubt in my mind, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people in the hockey circles share the same sentiment of you're there for a reason. You've earned it. You deserve it. And we are all backing you. We're really wishing you all of the best. And we're looking forward to seeing much more come from this team. And we'll be backing, as you said, there'll be a roller coaster, but one thing's for sure is along that whole ride, you'll have people in your corner backing you all the way.
Thank you very much. And it's a privilege to be here. And thanks for the time.
Thank you. Cheers. Hey guys, thank you very much for watching yet another episode of the African Playbook Network. We really appreciate you taking your time to watch this episode. Please do share in the comments what you enjoyed about the episode, where you're listening to the episode from, and let us know anything that you want to share with us. Please make use of the comment section. If you really enjoyed the episode, don't forget to hit the like button. Let us know that you enjoyed the episode, and don't forget as well, if you haven't hit that subscription button or you haven't followed us, please do hit that button. We'd love to hear more from you guys. And don't forget, click on the link below and you'll find all of our social media pages. Hit follow, like, subscribe, do your thing.